Okay, so I'm here at Howard University with my friend, Miss May. She's fabulous. And she is going to bow her head and learn a little bit about her as an artist. So she's my artist that I'm featuring in my seven simple questions about women in the arts. So Cheriss, thank you very much for giving me your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so my first, I had mentioned to you before, I want us to work in the arts, what you've done, where you are, who you are, where you came from, where you're forward thinking, specific, uncover your thoughts about being a woman in the arts and what experiences have you had that you think might be related specifically to you as a woman in the arts. So to give us a little starting point, give me some thoughts on who are you as an artist. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, I am, first of all, we are here at my class, and I just finished here at Howard University in the School of Communications. And I am a adjunct professor. I've been teaching here for 14 years now.
Oh, I didn't know it was that long.
14 years.
Wow.
And I teach a class called Digital Design, which is in our journalism department, in our journalism, TV, and film department.
Okay.
And aside from teaching at Howard, I'm a photojournalist. So I'm a photographer that primarily covers news.
Okay.
So I cover everything from the White House to Capitol Hill to the State Department, different things. And then there are some events that I cover outside of that in the museum world, some things I've done for the Holocaust Museum.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the Smithsonian institution as a whole, and then Smithsonian specifically with the African Art Museum and African American Museum.
Okay. Okay. So that's a good segue to how'd you get there? How did you get to where you are right now? What's your background?
Right. So my background is I'm actually a Howard alum, and I went to school in this very building. My major was, I got a BA in communications here at Howard. And my minor was actually, they call it electronic studio, but it's graphic design.
Okay.
But I took photography as an elective. I always had a love or a passion for visual storytelling. I loved telling stories without writing a word, just to be able to tell those stories with my camera through the lens. So that was always a hobby. I guess it started out as an interest. From an interest, it went to a hobby. From a hobby to a serious hobby, to the point of I was asked to do some work in it. So then once I started working in that field, then I knew that that's where I was supposed to be. That's where my passion lied. And it really helped me to realize that I love visual storytelling. So from there, I just started getting work. Organizations started to call. I had an editorial photo company out of, they're actually in Italy. And they saw some of my work online and reached out to me and asked me if I would, and this was during the Obama administration. And so they asked me if I would be someone that would work with them on covering the Obama administration, the White House.
Wow.
And so that's how I initially got into White House as a photojournalist.
Interesting.
So, and that really showed me that I really do enjoy in not only telling stories, but those things that are newsworthy, those things that are things that affect our everyday life, things that affect policy, especially with everything on Capitol Hill and the different things I'm able to cover, for that. So that got me started in that segment of photography, and then there was another photo agency out of New York that contacted me and asked me would I work with them And from there, I've done some things for the Washington Post. I've done some things for ESPN, The Undefeated, and some other publications.
I didn't know that was you.
So there were some things I did there. And then most recently, there was a photo that I took during our Howard homecoming. And O Magazine editors reached out to me, and they were interested in running the photo for their fall edition, which just came out now. So we were in talks about that, and it went through all the meetings and the pitches, and then they kind of said, okay, we'd like to publish this photo. And so they ran a story about it and published a photo. It's a double truck, so over two pages.
Look, did you hear that double truck? I know what that is. Okay, keep on going. Okay.
So it, I don't know if you can see this, but
oh, that's beautiful. Wait, can we get up? Can we turn it around so we can see? That is fabulous.
Photo.
That is fabulous. Okay.
And so there was that, and there were other opportunities that came up just on people seeing the work. Channel 7, they did inspiration during February of last year.
Okay.
So a producer reached out to me and asked me would I be a guest on the show. And so I was able to come and talk about the power of visual storytelling.
Okay.
So, there was that. And then most recently, I've been working on a photo campaign with the NAACP on getting people out to vote.
Okay.
Get out to vote.
Right. Okay.
So there were a
Very
series
relevant right now.
Exactly. So there were a series they had me do that are still running now with midterms, like 12 or 13 days away, that they've been running just to encourage people to understand and realize the power of their vote. And so, that's something that, I've been able to work on, that I was really proud to work on something that was meaningful and important to us, especially now.
I would say definitely now is very relevant. Okay, now you said something a couple seconds ago that I want to go back to. You used the word inspiration. Tell me a little bit about your inspirations. Do you have specific photographers from your learning that have kind of inspired you? Were there situations? Were there instructors, professors? What were the fuel in your background that kind of helped you get where you are?
So I would have to say, like, a well-known inspiration would be Gordon Parks. His whole approach to telling the life of Black Harlem, back then, was really something that inspired me on the art of visual storytelling. And not only that, but the importance of visual storytelling. Because of his visual documentation, the visual record of that life, then we're able to now look back and see a window into what that life looked like. Who were the people during that time? So if he didn't document that, then we wouldn't have that representation. We wouldn't know. So it really hammered home for me the importance of not only documentation in words and stories, but also the documentation in photos and pictures.
Okay.
Exactly. So I would have to say, like, that was like a huge inspiration. I have, a mentor. His name is Fred Watkins, and he worked for years for Ebony Jet as a photographer and editor. And through the years, he's been an inspiration. And he actually was instrumental in me going to South Africa for the first time.
Really?
So it just so happened I was meeting with him, and there was an opportunity for a photographer to document this trip in South Africa. And he asked me if I wanted to go. And
you said, I'll think about it.
Right.
You said, of course. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, that was it. And he's really been helpful in me navigating this whole world of photojournalism and, the ins and outs, not only on the photography side, but like business side as well, which has been really instrumental, in that. There are a ton of female photographers, of course, and Black women photographers, that come to mind. I think about Sharon Farmer, who was the White House photographer for the Clinton administration, and I do believe the first African American female White House photographer, official photographer. So,
interesting.
Yeah, so definitely there. It's so many outside of Gordon Parks, who is like a national treasure and someone who is well known. There are so many people who aren't so well known that are, inspirational.
Definitely. Right.
And to me, it's more so of someone who is not only knowledgeable, but they're passionate about what they do and what it is that they do. There are so many genres and areas of photography you can go into, but it's something about someone who not only knows their craft, but they have that appreciation and they have that passion for it. That's an inspiration. So.
Okay, so now let's go to another aspect of the 7 simple questions, and you kind of touched on that. I want you to answer this as a 2-part thinking question. In your past, have you thought back, and you think back kind of retrospectively, have you thought back and realized that certain things that were happening or certain experiences you were having were possibly because of you were a female in the photography arena? And then I want you to flash forward and kind of think reflectively about today. What are your experiences as a female inside of the photography realm? Because, the interesting thing about photography is I can think of lots of male photographers.
Sure.
But female photographers, other than Annie Leibovitz, I can't give you some names right off the top of my head. So give me your thoughts about your past, and then kind of tell me a little bit about your present and how being a female has affected your experiences.
Well, the past and the present really intersect in this, with this question. It's a great question. I've experienced the same thing in my past that I do in my present.
Interesting. Okay.
Which is interesting, and it's actually a sad commentary. Because don't get me wrong, there are positive stories there are positive instances, but when you speak specifically as a female or a woman photographer, there are challenges that I've experienced, my colleagues and counterparts have experienced as women that men don't have to deal with or they don't experience. For me personally, it's I still see it as a male-dominated field, especially in when you look at photojournalism. And to be honest, it's a white male-dominated field. There are few and far between not only women, but women of color that I see, especially in photojournalism. The challenges, I would say some challenges experienced or some things that maybe as a woman that you come across is because it is that male-dominated field, sometimes you don't get that same level of respect in the field. I feel like there is a level of questioning and even an extra level of having to prove yourself above and beyond what my male counterparts, have to do.
Okay.
It's a thing of looking at, okay, what equipment are you working with? Let me see your work. I feel like there are maybe some extra hoops that you have to jump through to prove that you belong there just as much as your male counterparts. In terms of opportunities, I still see that those opportunities are more are presented more to my male counterparts than they are the women counterparts.
Now, curiosity, would you say that seeing this difference of, having to qualify yourself more, would you say that's been isolated to your professional world, or did you experience that academically? Was it something that you experienced as part of your academic training, schooling, trajectory, prior to, graduating and becoming a professional in the field? Would you say that it's a pervasive experience all throughout, or would you say that you kind of noticed it, you felt it when you became a professional photojournalist?
I felt it more in my professional life, honestly. As a student and even as a professor, I didn't really feel that. I didn't really experience it. As a student, I was fortunate enough to have a great mix of male and female advisors, professors. So that never really even came to my mind or was an issue as a student. As a professor, my colleagues here, it's a mix of male, female. I teach at an HBCU, historically Black college and university. So diversity hasn't been an issue.
Right.
It's when I was in my career on the professional side, that's where I would experience it. That's where I felt it. That's where I would see it. That's where it's oftentimes been a thing of, let me check your credentials. Are you supposed to be here? Type of thing. It's that kind of thing that you've heard of the stories in the past.
Right.
And you think like, okay, this is 2018. We've had some years.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, but it still goes on. It's still an issue. It's still of, even the thing of when you're conducting business and doing certain things, it's more of a honey, this, not more of a looking at you as a counterpart, an equal. Sometimes it's that thing of, oh, this little, this woman, this girl, and I wouldn't say that blanketly across the board, but it is definitely there. It's definitely there. It was there in my past. It's here presently. So,
well, no, that's a good segue, because my next kind of framing of questions is forward thinking. So, knowing where you are today and you thinking about yourself, going into your own future, do you think that you will have to do anything, or do you anticipate anything different, special, concerted efforts that you'll have to make to reach goals that you have later on down the line because you're a female photojournalist? Do you think there's anything that you'll need to do differently? Do you think things are changing? Do you see a change? Can you see, the experiences you just gave us a window in? Do you think that those experiences will dissipate as time goes on because of things that you're seeing? Do you think that your future will be different?
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that it will be, but I'm also practical. So although I'm hopeful, I know that, there's that saying, be the change you want to see. So instead of just clinging on to some hope and not putting action behind that, I want to be proactive. I want to do things to help make that future better. Not only for myself, but those who are coming after me. My students and other, the next generation that comes, I just want it to be a point where that doesn't even enter people's minds. It's not a question. So personally, what I'm doing is I'm getting more active in the community, in that career. I want to get more active in, and I am getting more active in different associations that I'm a part of.
Okay.
Different things that go on in the photo community, in the photojournalism world. So that's going to take me putting my time and effort into those things that I need to do to be a voice, or to
Interesting, yes.
be like, to present things of maybe different ways that, you know, we as a community need to look at things, or to, a lot of times it's, you just have to be in the room. So it's that being that diverse voice in there to say, hey, have we thought about this, or look at this, or consider this, and just so you're challenging the way things have always been done. A lot of times people become complacent in, well, this is the way it's always been done. This is how it's always been, but that doesn't make it right.
Right.
And that thinking, like, we need to be more progressive in that, with that. And so I think what it takes is when people like myself and other people have expressed, like, okay, we need some more diverse voices, we need some changes, that we need to not only speak about that, but to also be that change, and to be active in helping to bring about that change.
Yes.
And that means becoming part of the leadership in, you know, some of the organizations, or, you know, getting on when we have different conferences and things like that, being able to be a part of that and to bring that discussion to light.
Okay. Now, you're a great person to talk to, because you steer the questions wonderfully, like almost like I told you these things. But as my wind down, I want to, you know, our day crescendo to be kind of reflectively and kind of recommendation-wise. Two-part question. What would you tell your younger self, the you that you are today, knowing what you know? What would you tell your younger self based on your lessons learned?
I would tell myself to don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to let your light shine. Don't be afraid to be active, to be proactive. Don't be afraid to those things that I thought were good at the time. Don't be afraid to act on those things.
Interesting. Okay.
And that shyness is just, you're like fighting with yourself. So I would say, like, you know, my younger self was very shy. And there were things, you know, I had ideas or things I wanted to say, but I was so shy that I didn't say it, and I just kept it to myself.
Interesting.
So I would say, don't keep those things to yourself. And, you know, the worst somebody can say is no.
Right.
And it's not going to kill you.
Oh, I know. No sounds so horrible. You don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Like, so it makes you, like, almost not act because of
it's
the
like,
fear of
not,
no.
Yeah.
But you could have got a yes.
Exactly.
Right. I can relate to that.
And you never know unless you try, unless you do it.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. So no matter
so
how many no's.
You would tell your younger self,
yeah.
and tell my younger self that too. Talk to your younger and my younger self. Yeah.
And although, you know, doors may close in your face, those aren't the only doors.
Those aren't the only doors. I love it.
You know what I'm saying?
Those aren't the only doors. Right.
That's what I would tell my younger self.
And as my last question, because you do work with young people here at Howard, what do you tell them? What are your recommendations, your words of advice to your students? You know, they see you as the instructor, but what do you give them as a mentor?
I definitely tell them that. What I just shared that I would tell my younger self, I share with my students. I also tell them to that they have to brand themselves.
Interesting.
Branding is very important, no matter what you choose to do with your life. Also, don't feel like you have to look at it as marketing yourself, because sometimes, well, some people have this issue. Not everyone has the issue, but some people have the issue of not wanting to feel like they're bragging.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
try to encourage them.
Yes. Yes.
So I try to encourage them that you're not, when you share those accomplishments
Mm-hmm.
and what you're working on, what you're doing, it's not bragging. You're actually creating your brand, and you're putting that content together to communicate to people, this is who I am, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I'm doing, this is what is important to me. And you're letting people know that, because otherwise they're not going to know.
They're not going to.
You know, so you sitting on something because you don't want to let your light shine, you know, isn't doing anything but dimming you and others around you, because you don't know, you know, something you say or do that you share may be an inspiration to someone else.
Definitely.
And you don't know that unless you do it. So I try to encourage them to do that, and how important communication is. And being able to communicate who you are and what you stand for and what you're trying to do.
Okay. Okay.
So just being an advocate for yourself.
An advocate for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely something that I think we all can
Mm-hmm.
find value in, regardless of where you are in your trajectory
Right.
of life. And I think as within this creative realm, there is something. Creativity is an interesting thing, because there is something that some people have a hard time giving that creativity
Right.
to the world. So I
Right.
think that's a very, don't be afraid to let your light shine. I loved how you said that, and I loved the thought about branding yourself. What do you want the world to know about you, and what do you want to be, what you stand for, you know, and who you are, and
Definitely.
what you're thought of. I love that. Well, Cheriss, thank you
you're
so
welcome.
much. Oh, I appreciate you giving me your time. She let her class go early just for me. Thank you so much. This was great. This was wonderful. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.